from the Port of Mombasa to Naivasha Inland Container Depot, NICD. However, later, in 2022, a new directive was issued to revert the services back to the Port of Mombasa, Kenya. Honorable members, the petitioner is concerned about the lack of transparency, particularly pertaining to the revenues collected by the Kenya Railways Corporation for both passenger and freight services since its inception. The petitioner states that efforts to get answers on the matter through the Ministry of National Treasury and the Ministry of Transport, Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development and Public Works and the Kenya Railways have not been forthcoming. Honorable members, the petitioner therefore prays that the National Assembly interrogates the Kenya Railways Corporation and other relevant state departments on the general operations and the revenues collected by the Kenya Railways Corporation. Honorable members, having established that the matter raised in the petition is well within the authority of this House, and further, the matters raised in this petition are not pending before any court of law or constitutional body or legal body, I hereby commit the petition to the Public Petitions Committee for the consideration and pursuant to Standing Order 208A. The committee is required to consider the petition and report its finding to the House and to the petitioner in accordance to Standing Order 2272. I thank you, honorable members.
Order number 5, papers.
There's a point. What's your point of order? Mwalimu Malema Ombaka, member for Emuhaya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for according me this chance. Ordinarily, Honorable Speaker, with your I seek your indulgence, if you could weigh in on that petition for some time. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The petition is going to the committee. It will later come to the House, and the House will have an opportunity to weigh in on it. Thank you. May proceed, Leader of Majority.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. 1. The annual report of the Parliamentary Service Commission for the financial year 2021-2022. Report of the Auditor General and financial statements on Eldama Ravine Technical and Vocational College for 18 months, period ended 30th June 2022. Reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2021 and the certificates therein. Kabianga Tea Farm Company Limited, University of Kabianga, Kisii University, Taita Taveta University, Rongo University, Kamukunji Technical and Vocational College, Lodwar Technical and Vocational College, Tomboya University College, Kenya Utalii College, Bukura Agricultural College, Coast Water Works Development Agency, National Mining Corporation, Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, Ewaso Neuro South Development Authority, Kenya Pipeline Company Limited, Koshin Technical Training Institute, Musakasa Technical Training Institute, Bumbe Technical Training Institute, Mawego Technical Training Institute, Sotik Technical Training Institute, Sikri Technical and Vocational College for the Blind and Deaf, Technical University of Mombasa, Kenya Ferry Services, Meru National Polytechnic and Nyandarua National Polytechnic. 2. Reports of the Auditor General and financial statements of NGCDF with respect to the following constituencies for the year ended 30th June 2021 and certificates therein: Kasipul, Baringo Central, Kabete, Kikuyu, and Gatundu North. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Chairperson, Public Debt and Privatization Committee.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Tuesday, 21st February 2023. report of the Public Debt and Privatization Committee on its consideration of the Consolidated Fund Services expenditure for the supplementary estimates number 1 of 2022-2023. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Chairperson, Committee on Delegated Legislation.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Tuesday, 21st February 2023. Report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Crops Coffee General Amendment Regulations 2022.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
I now call upon the Chairperson for Public Debt and Privatization Committee to give a notice of motion.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House adopts the report of the Public Debt and Privatization Committee on its consideration of the Consolidated Fund Services expenditures for the supplementary estimates number 1 of 2022-2023 laid on the table of the House today, Tuesday, February 2023. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I now call upon the Chairperson for Committee on Delegated Legislation to give the notice of motion.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I wish to give notice of the following motion, that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Crops Coffee General Amendment Regulations 2022 laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, February 21st, 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 18 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013 and Standing Order number 210, paragraph 4, subparagraph B, annuls in its entirety the Crops Coffee General Amendment Regulations 2022, published as the legal notice number 102 of 2022. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I now call upon the Honorable Peter Kaluma, member for Homa Bay Town.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order number 33, Sabra Rule 1, I seek leave for the adjournment of the House for purposes of discussing an urgent matter of national importance, being the ongoing challenges being faced in the implementation of the competency-based curriculum within the education system. Honorable Speaker, as part of the implementation of the competency-based curriculum, the Ministry of Education recently issued guidelines domiciling junior secondary schools within primary schools. The transition has brought anxiety among parents and learners, especially regarding the lack of capacity for optimal operationalization of the system, given the current state of infrastructural development in most public schools. Additionally, it is observed that due to the lack of adequate training and deployment of teaching staff, one teacher is being assigned to teach up to 14 subjects in the junior secondary schools. As a matter of fact, learning has not been going on in majority of public schools in the country. This is alarming and will inevitably be detrimental to the education sector in the long run, as pupils in these schools are likely to be denied quality education. It is against this background, Honorable Speaker, that I seek leave for the adjournment of the House to discuss this matter of great national importance. Honorable Speaker, I so move, and I confirm to the Chair, Honorable Speaker, that I believe there is support and insufficient support within the House for this adjournment.
Everyone, say everyone.
I can see that this is unanimous. You may be seated now, members. Honorable members, as it seems that this motion has full House support, I direct that the House be adjourned at 4 p.m. For discussions to be held by members on this important matter.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
I now call upon the Honorable Gidhua wa Mashukuru to give you a statement.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to provision of Standing Order 44-2C, I wish to request for a statement from the Chairperson of the Departmental Committee of Lands regarding composition of land owners following compulsory acquisition of land by the national government for construction of Nairobi Western Bypass Highway. Honorable Speaker, in June 2016, the government of Kenya commissioned construction of the Nairobi Western Bypass Highway with the aim of reducing traffic congestion within the city. Construction of the Western Bypass was launched in March 2019 with funding from China Exim Bank. The bypass, which stretches 16.5 kilometers, is a dual carriageway that connects from Gitaro at the end of the southern bypass in Kikuyu town, then traverse into the northern eastern direction through Wangige, Kihara, Ndendero, Rumungi, and terminates in Waka, where it connects to northern bypass. Honorable Speaker, Article 43 of the Constitution, read together with Section 111 and 115 of the Land Act 2012, oblige the government, where it is exercising its power to compulsory acquire land, to compensate the affected landowners in a prompt, full, and just manner. Further to Section 125(1) of the Land Act require the government, through the National Land Commission, to as soon as practicable, to take possession, pay full and just compensation to all persons interested in the land. Honorable Speaker, despite this express provision of the Constitution and the law, hundreds of landowners whose parcel of land were compulsory acquired to pay for construction of the Nairobi Western Bypass are yet to be compensated by the National Land Commission. This is notwithstanding the fact that as at 30th June 2020, the National Land Commission had 10,453,660,980 under an account number 010-100-3298-0000 that is held at the National Bank, and that as at 30th June 2021, the fund stood at 13,727,766,032. The funds are idle and acquire interest, yet the landowners who surrendered possession of their land, the funds are idle and acquire interest, yet the landowners who surrender their possession of their land early to the government are just in trust that they would be compensated a full and in timely manner. Honorable Speaker, it is against this backdrop that I seek a statement from the Chairperson of the Departmental Committee of Lands on the following one. Could the Chairperson explain where the landowners who are affected by the compulsory acquisition of land for construction of Nairobi Western Bypass have not been paid, yet the monies are available with the National Land Commission? 2. Who are the beneficiaries of the interest earned in the composition account held by the National Land Commission? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I now call upon the Honorable Beatrice Chepnyono Kemei, member for Kericho County.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I actually rise to request for statement regarding sexual harassment of female workers in various tea estates in Kericho County. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 44-2C, I rise to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Labor regarding sexual harassment of female workers in various tea estates in Kericho County. Honorable Speaker, it is of great concern that female workers in various tea estates in Kericho County have deplorable working and living conditions and have been victims of sexual harassment and abuse at the hands of male bosses. These vulnerable female workers at the estates with no other sources of income have no choice but to have sex with male supervisors in order to survive. Sex is reportedly demanded by supervisors in return for allocating lighter duties, for helping with securing better housing and guaranteeing their meager wages will not be deducted. It appears as if all the supervisors are male and hence no consideration of female parity. Female workers who refuse sexual advances from male supervisors pay a high price and are given too much work or allocated to work in lonely and dangerous blacking zones. These tea estates do not adhere to the policy on sexual harassment. As a result of this despicable and inhumane treatment, these workers have contracted various sexually transmitted infections, including HIV and AIDS, eventually losing their lives. Honorable Speaker, it is high time that the rights and dignity of female workers is upheld and respected by male bosses in tea estates, and it is against this background I seek a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Labor on the following. 1. Could the chairperson provide concrete information on the allegations of sexual harassment of female workers in the various tea estates in Kericho County? Could the chairperson explain what measures the government is putting in place to protect the rights of female workers in these tea estates? Could the chairperson explain measures the government is putting in place to ensure these tea estates adhere to labor laws and implement policy on sexual harassment? Could the chairperson consider carrying out investigations into these heinous acts, ensure culpable perpetrators are brought to book and justice is served to the victims? I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
As this is a very urgent, very important matter, and I know that there were other members who had attempted to make statements to that effect. I now call upon the Honorable Beatrice Elachi, member for Dagoretti North, to weigh in on this thing.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise on Standing Order 84 to make it a personal statement, but also for the women of Kericho, and I want to thank the women rep of Kericho. But Madam Speaker, let me just read my statement after looking at what happened on BBC yesterday night. Dear honorable members, today is a very difficult day for me as a woman, a leader, and a citizen of Kenya. Today I have been reminded that slavery still exists in this nation. Today I stand dejected because this slavery has been going on under our nose as leaders, because I cannot explain how a man has violated women in tea plantations for 30 years and nothing has been done. Today, my fellow members, the tea you drank this morning is laced with blood. Blood of women who have been raped on the same soil that they work tirelessly to fend for their children. Land that up to today cannot be explained how multinationals acquired in the guise of investment, watch with flowery policies as generations of women get raped one after another, year after a year, and everyone around them turns a blind eye. Some of us are very incapable, Madam Speaker, of turning a blind eye to such atrocities. And BBC last night aired a documentary that took them 18 months to investigate, to capture the voices of our mothers, sisters, and daughters in the hands of Jeremiah Koskei, John Chepchok, Samuel Yebei, and John Asava. The crime of rape in tea plantations is one that never stops. It is one that no one wants to stop. But I want to believe that this House will do everything within its powers to stop it today. This crime is one that is prosecutable under the Sexual Offences Act, yet goes on unbattered because no one wants to hold multinationals accountable. How else would we explain our silence 11 years after the Kenya National Human Rights Report on the same? The media has now chosen to highlight it, and I take it to the doorsteps of the Unilever and Finlays. Our undoubtedly members has been exposed, and we cannot remain silent. If we do nothing, we will, and what will we tell the women of Kenya? Do we care? Do we value them? Are we so interested in profits that we turn a blind eye to such atrocities that can only be equated in modern days of slavery? Madam Speaker, I am asking today, who will give justice to these women who work in Unilever and Finlay's tea plantations? Who will give justice? I am asking this House to ensure the multinationals and not continue to sexually abuse our women on the same soil of our forefathers. It is an abomination and a curse on our land when the cries of our women are defended by money in the name of investments. Lastly, Madam Speaker, first step today is Joseph Chepchok, Jeremiah Kosgei, Yebei, and John Asava to sleep in jail tonight. We call upon the COs. Then we can take the next step, Madam Speaker, that no woman is safe when they are still roaming around. Multinationals have to be accountable, and no more flowery sexual harassment policies on paper and nothing tangible to show for it. Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is very sad for those women of Kericho who are now HIV positive, even their families and their children. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Elachi. I now call upon just one more member, the Honorable Chepkosgei Muge, member for Nandi County.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to give my comment on the said statement. Honorable Speaker, this morning we woke up to very sad news about what has been happening in Kericho in the multinationals, Honorable Speaker. Now, Honorable Speaker, I also come from a tea growing area where we have multinationals, and allow me to quote Honorable Speaker a Kiswahili saying that says ukiona cha mwenziwe kikinyolewa chako kitie maji. Honorable Speaker, this is not an isolated case, and it's not only happening in Kericho, it is actually happening everywhere and in every workplace in this country. Honorable Speaker, this is a matter that has not been given adequate attention. It is a matter that actually affected so many women and so many people in this country. It is a matter that is actually affecting people who are trying to fend for their families, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the details of the happenings that happened in Kericho as they were exposed, they are extremely serious, Honorable Speaker, and they are actually horrific, so to speak. They do not have a place in this country, Honorable Speaker, and they do not have a place anywhere. Honorable Speaker, as you can see, and as the expose went, you can see that this is actually an endemic issue that deserves urgent attention, Honorable Speaker. It deserves adequate and urgent attention from all stakeholders for justice to be served and for the perpetrators to be held accountable, Honorable Speaker, and for them to be used as an example, Honorable Speaker. I can only say one thing about the perpetrators. Actually, Honorable Speaker, these are perverts who do not deserve any leadership position. They do not deserve any hearing in this country or anywhere else. They should just pay for the heinous crimes and acts they have committed. Honorable Speaker, I want to tell the workers of the multinationals in Kericho and in this country at large, Honorable Speaker, where these things are happening, that the women and the members of parliament in this parliament, Honorable Speaker, will stand with them, and we will ensure that justice is served adequately and they are all brought to book and they are used as perfect examples of anyone who would want to sexually exploit the women or even the men in this country, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, we want to also tell the multinationals that we want to see things happening, not things on paper in regards to sexual abuse and harassment in places of work, Honorable Speaker, so that we don't have good policies on paper, but the actionability or the implementation of the said policies is zero, Honorable Speaker. We will be holding them accountable so that we have conducive working environments for our people who are trying to fend for their families, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, as the committee that has been committed, we want to ask them to give us a very comprehensive report for us to be able to use it first to be to serve justice, and secondly, Honorable Speaker, as a stern warning to anyone who will ever try to do such a thing. Honorable Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member for Nandi County. Honorable Muge. One moment. This particular statement will be referred to the Departmental Committee on Labor, and on the one for the Honorable Githua Wamashukuru will be referred to the Departmental Committee on Infrastructure, Transport and Roads. And I think they will have 2 weeks to respond to it. Thank you. Next order. What's your point of order, Honorable Gikaria?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise on a point of order to seek your direction. Honorable Speaker.
Standing order number?
Honorable Speaker, we have this office that was built and meant for offices of members of parliament that also houses, I think, 15 committee rooms. Honorable Speaker, we were unable to have our meeting today as Committee on Environment because when we inquired yesterday, we were told there are no rooms for us to be able to meet. Honorable Speaker, we would want to give a direction as to when do we expect these offices to be finalized, and the offices can be accessed by members of parliament and committees for that matter. Honorable Speaker, we are really going through a rough time. Last time we had to, I don't know how many committees were meeting at Windsor. Yet we have offices here that we can be able to easily. Maybe, Honorable Speaker, you could give us a direction as to when we expect to start using those facilities which I want to believe PLC has spent quite a substantial amount of money for us to be able to start using those facilities. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I think the clerk will have picked that from the Hansard and then will be able to give an appropriate response to be communicated from the Speaker at the next session.
Order number 8, motion. General debate on the proposal to Parliament to consider amending the Constitution and the standing orders. Resumption of debate.
Any members who may want to contribute? Okay. I know the last time we were here, Honorable Kirwa still had 7 minutes, and so we'll allow him to start. The Honorable Kirwa. Yes. Honorable Kirwa, the mic.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity that you've given me to continue to support the motion on affirmative action by the President. Madam Speaker, naturally, in this country, women do get a real deal on most of the issues, especially politically. And I do support as to why, us as Parliament, we need to make sure we abide by the 2/3 gender rule, which I believe it's overdue. Most of the countries, most of the parliaments have complied. Kenya Parliament have not, and we run into a situation where this Parliament might not comply to 2/3 gender rule. I do support the 2/3 gender rule. The other issue that I want to support, Madam Speaker, is the issue of NGCDF. In my constituency, most of the students and all the developments that has taken place in schools is because of NGCDF. And as of today, if the NGCDF will not be available, Madam Speaker, we will not be able to meet all the needs, we will not be able to support children from poor families, we will not be able to actually achieve what we want to do. So I support this motion to entrench NGCDF in the Constitution so that most of the families will get a chance to experience development. The other issue I want to support, Madam Speaker, is the issue of CSS coming to the floor of Parliament to answer questions. I'm not supporting this motion for 2 reasons. I don't support this motion because if we give the CSS the permission to come and answer questions, what will the committees do? The responsibilities of the committee is to actually hold the CSS and answer the questions. But if they come to the floor of the House, then the committees that has been given the responsibility will not have the powers, and so we will be weakening the committees. So on this particular motion, I actually don't support it. 3, I think we need to entrench. Constitutionally, committees have a responsibility to the people of Kenya to act as oversight. And if we don't give them that power to act as oversight, then the CSS will be able
to get away. I would suggest it stays status quo, wherever it was, it continues, but not take the powers to allow them to come to the floor of the House. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I now call upon Honorable John Waweru, member for Dagoretti South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I do rise to support this proposal by the Kenya Parliament to amend the Constitution to accommodate, among other things, the things that have been listed by the earlier speakers. But Madam Speaker, for me, the biggest concern is the issue of us decentralizing money from the center. Just as we are pursuing the decentralization of monies from the center at Treasury to come to the constituencies, Madam Speaker, I think there is a case that can also be made for the decentralization of monies from the county governments at the center to the wards, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, we as members of Parliament understand the benefits that have been accruing from decentralizing monies to the constituencies. Madam Speaker, I do think that this opportunity we have is the opportunity that we can use to give the same benefits to honorable members of county assemblies who are elected leaders like us, sitting in legislatures like this in 47 counties, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I would like to propose that with the opportunity that we have right now, we can start working on the way of finding how we can decentralize monies from the centers of counties to get to the lowest unit of devolution, which is a ward. That is why, Madam Speaker, when we were doing the pre-conference, I did come up with a proposal. The proposal that we were calling the county decentralized funds, Madam Speaker, and if your memory serves you right, on the day that we were debating this motion at the pre-conference, there was not less than 5 members of county assembly led by the honorable member of county assembly from Ngara, the honorable Mwaura, who had come to witness Kenya Parliament debating these issues, hoping that we as Parliament can champion their needs just as we are championing our own, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, in the interest of time and to save time for other speakers who will be speaking about us, I'm just using this informally to make it a notice that when we get to the third reading of this motion, Madam Speaker, I shall be coming with an amendment that will be seeking, as I said, to decentralize monies from the center of the counties to the lowest unit of devolution, which is the ward, and a fund that can be known as the county decentralization fund, Madam Speaker, to be administered at ward level. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity, and I do support.
Honorable members, I'm just following the list here on the requests, but if I call out your name and you've only contributed to this particular motion, you could kindly pass so that other people can have an opportunity. I can see on the list there is the Honorable Bernard Kitur, member for Nandi Hills. Had you contributed? Okay. Next is the Honorable Joseph Makilap, member for Baringo North. The member Makilap is not here? Okay. The Honorable Rahim Dawood, member for North Imenti.
Yes.
You had spoken to this motion, haven't you?
No, I have not, Madam Speaker.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam
Yes, the
Speaker.
Honorable Leader of Minority, I can see you have an intervention. You have a point of order? You had spoken to this motion.
Madam Speaker, he's taking my time. Leader of Minority is taking my
Leader of
time.
Minority, please have a seat. We have someone on the floor. I thought you had a point of order. Okay. All right, proceed, Honorable Rahim.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hope my time will be increased because my minority leader normally takes everybody's time.
Madam Speaker, the bill which was, the motion which has been brought to change the constitution is a very timely one, because we've tried to do it in the last parliament and the two previous parliaments, where we have tried to do the two-thirds gender principle rule, where Honorable Aden Duale had brought it a couple of times, and I think the Honorable Deputy Speaker as well had proposed something. Madam Speaker, we need to sort out this two-thirds gender rule. If it is to be passed, it has to be passed in this parliament. Otherwise, the way we were told by Justice Maraga, the Chief Justice then, emeritus, where he said that we should dissolve this parliament. Madam Speaker, we need to get our act together so that nobody can go again to the Supreme Court and ask for a judgment so that this House will be dissolved. Madam Speaker, we have been told regarding cabinet secretaries appearing in parliament will not assist in any way, the committees will be moribund. It is not true at all, because when the CSs come, they will not be able to answer all the questions. So the work of committees will still go on the way it is. It is just that when a CS comes, I remember in the previous parliament, we changed the standing orders where we accepted that the CSs would come and answer the questions. But at that time, I remember the AG, because I was in the House Rules and Procedure Committee, where the AG refused. He said by doing that, they would be demeaning the CSs and the work would not go on. But Madam Speaker, I agree with the President's reservations that we need the CSs in Parliament so that we can even question them. When they bring questions, we need to interrogate them if they are telling the truth. Because like many of the questions which are asked even today regarding security or the education sector, if the CS was here, it would be very, very easy. It doesn't mean that each and every member of Parliament would ask a question, but many members have got similar questions which could be answered. Madam Speaker, we need to even entrench the NGCDF, GAF, and the other funds which are there, the Senate Oversight Fund. Because, Madam Speaker, we all know, and whoever has served in Parliament knows the importance of NGCDF and GAF funds, because that is the backbone. I mean, we cannot be expected to cede our authority on NGCDF to the counties, which counties do not even, the monies they are allocated, we do not even know how prudently they use that money. So, Madam Speaker, when we are saying we want to entrench it in the Constitution, I think that is the right way. We will do whatever it takes to go and entrench NGCDF and GAF in the Constitution. Madam Speaker, we need...
One moment, Honorable Dawood. Honorable Rosa Bui, you're next, and I see you're running around. You're next speaking, so take your seat. Go on, Honorable Dawood.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, lastly, we need to do what needs to be done. We do not need sideshows that this is, we are going to be creating a system where it is a parliamentary system, whereas we had adopted the presidential system. Madam Speaker, what doesn't work doesn't work. And what works, we need to put it in the Constitution what works. So when some of our colleagues, because of political interests, they think that because it has been brought by somebody they do not like, that's why they would oppose. Look at the laws in its entirety, the way it is going to assist us in the future, because we should not be thinking only about ourselves, we should be thinking how it's going to assist running of this parliament in a proper way, in a structured way, so that we can be working easily. Madam Speaker, we want to do these things like the two-thirds gender rule. We can be seeing how we're going to go about it. And Madam Speaker, we need even to sort out the boundaries review. Madam Speaker, the boundaries which were done in the year 2010 or earlier, they are due for review. And Madam Speaker, we do not want gerrymandering. We need our constituencies which are there, and we need, even if it is to do new counties, because we cannot have 12 constituencies in one county and then a neighboring county has got only 3 constituencies. Madam Speaker, we need those extra counties to be done and extra constituencies to be done, and which have to be scrapped, let them be scrapped, because that is the law. And if the boundaries review is done, Madam Speaker, I even want to urge my colleagues not to be picketing on each and everything, because that is not the way we are going to make laws. We need to make laws in Parliament, and this is the place to do it, and not outside the House. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate.
Honorable members, as we proceed, I just wish to recognize the presence of Sugoi girls in the Speaker's gallery from Tarbo constituency from Uasin Gishu County, the City of Champions. I also want to recognize the Kenya Women Parliamentary Association that have made today an African Dress Day. And as you can see, our women are fabulously dressed. I now call upon, to continue with the debate, I now call upon the Honorable Rosa Buyu, member for Kisumu West.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank you for this opportunity. Madam Speaker, and more than just being grateful that you're sitting on that seat in a day when the Kenya Women Parliamentarians Association have decided to make this an African Attire Day, I want to acknowledge the support that you give Keropa. Madam Speaker, we know that there are so many designers, small designers, sometimes even called tailors, in our small rural homes, who struggle to make ends meet through making clothes for members of Parliament and for other people, sometimes even school children, but they go unrecognized. Madam Speaker, what we are doing today as Keropa is standing up for these women and telling them that we acknowledge their efforts, we appreciate their efforts, and telling them that in the highest law-making institution of the land, we are proud to wear the designs that they make. Madam Speaker, when you look at the women this afternoon, they look smart. And the clothes they're wearing today have come from nobody else but the local designers. Madam Speaker, I for one, what I'm wearing today is by a designer known as Jackie Obiero of Baltoni Fashions. This is a lady who has been a designer for over 20 years and has probably never been applauded for her efforts. But today I sit or I stand in Parliament wearing her attire and feeling really smart. Madam Speaker, you don't need to tell me that you think I'm smart, but I can see it in your eyes that you really think I'm smart. Madam Speaker, I want to go to the motion of the day. And right from the onset, I'd like to say that I oppose the amendment of the Constitution and standing orders. Madam Speaker, we know that the work of the committees is actually to interrogate even the ministers on behalf of the other members of Parliament and indeed on behalf of Kenyans. Madam Speaker, when we allow those ministers to actually come into Parliament or onto the floor of the House, we are actually weakening those committees. And Madam Speaker, I remember the effort of BBI to actually make ministers be answerable to members of Parliament was thwarted by no other than the current government. Madam Speaker, why are we therefore in a hurry to make this about time, to make ministers come to Parliament to answer questions? What is it that has just happened? Madam Speaker, I would also like to say that we have to make up our minds whether we want to go into presidential or parliamentary system. And if it's a presidential system, we must respect the rules of that system. Madam Speaker, for that reason, I stand to oppose and oppose again the amendment to the Constitution and amendment to the standing orders. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. Honorable Opio Wandai Ugunja.
There is a tendency which is creeping into this house, which is very dangerous. The constitution and the standing orders are very clear. Yeah, the precedence in this house starts with the speaker, leader of majority, leader of minority. So in that order, that has to be followed. Otherwise, it will cause chaos in this house. Madam Speaker,
Honorable Pio Wandai,
that notwithstanding,
you cannot cast aspersions on the speaker. You have already been given precedence. You are not the next one. So please take your time and address the motion.
I'm saying this for record. Yes. Let me contribute to this motion. And I'll start by saying that all that I've said before concerning this matter stands. And for avoidance of doubt, I don't think it was even necessary for a communique or a communication of the sort that we are dealing with in this motion to come to this house in the manner it did. The House had already, on its own motion, commenced to work on specifically the issue of NGCDF and those other funds. So there was no further need for any prompting. And my position on NGCDF and those other funds, including GAF, has been very clear that indeed we need to entrench those funds in the Constitution. And that is the position of my coalition. Because of the clear benefits that have accrued from those funds to our people everywhere in the country. Coming to the issue of the creation of the position of leader of opposition, I still maintain and hold the view that the approach we are taking is not proper. Is not proper. My position has been that if indeed we think the time is ripe for reviewing the Constitution, which I strongly believe it is, then we must take a holistic view of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Because it's now more than 12 years since its promulgation in 2010. It's indeed ripe for review. But we can't do it through cherry picking, through patchwork. That will not be proper. I have also asked many times, and I've gotten no answers, as to what is it that we want to achieve by creating this position of leader of official opposition, whilst retaining intact the structure that we have currently, which is purely presidential. What, for instance, will be the role of the leader of official opposition vis-a-vis the role of the leader of minority party, for instance? Nobody is giving me any answers. I said, and I still want to repeat, that we must choose what we want to do. Agree to abolish this presidential system and go parliamentary route, or retain this presidential system with all its attributes without attempting to create a mongrel in the name of amendments to the Constitution. We cannot, as Kenyans, continue to appear as if we don't know what we want, and yet we really know what we want. The third issue is the matter of amending the standing orders of the National Assembly to allow cabinet secretaries to come before the full House and answer questions from honorable members of parliament. Again, I've said this time and again, that you cannot do that by merely amending the standing orders. That would go to the core of Article 255 of the Constitution. Because any time you bring an extra person who is not contemplated under the Constitution to be in this House under whatever guise, you are interfering with the functions of Parliament. And therefore, you are compelled under Article 255 of the Constitution to undertake an amendment through a referendum. There are no two ways about it. No two ways about it. And it's not rocket science. Any plain reading of the Constitution will tell you that you have got no two ways about it. So what is this rush then? To try and bring cabinet secretaries to the House through the back door? What is it that it's not working now that you want to cure? We have been in this House under this Constitution for the last 10 years now. What is it that is not working with our committee system that you want to cure through these backdoor changes? What is it? Nobody has told me. Nobody. And there's no, this is not politics. We know where to play politics. We know very well. This is not politics. And I want those members who are here to listen to me very keenly. Because if we go this route, you will come to regret. We cannot open up this House to strangers really, in parliamentary parlance, to strangers. Because even when the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury comes to read the budget speech, he does so under very clear terms and arrangements. But to allow every other Cabinet Secretary to be thrown into this House every other day, purporting to answer questions directly from members.
What's your point of order, Honorable Owen Bai?
I wish you would allow me to continue. You know,
Just 1 minute. Honorable Speaker, Article 125.
Honorable Opio Wandai, you have been here long. Please take your seat.
You know, I am getting amazed.
Article 125 of the Constitution says, if the House of Parliament and any of its committees has powers to summon any person to appear before it for the purpose of giving evidence or providing information. Parliament has powers to summon any member to do that, either in committee or as Parliament. Thank you.
Continue, Honorable Opio.
Let me continue. And obviously ignore him. Because if that were the case, then why amending the standing orders? If it was clear that you can summon them, and you are summoning them even currently under the standing orders, this is not summoning. This is something else. But Madam Speaker, let me say this. On a matter such as this, you need to be very, very sober-minded. Because if you go this route, that you think this is a directive from switching whatever party, then you will come to regret. Under the current constitutional arrangement, there is no room for a cabinet secretary to come to the House. There is no room. There is no room. And if you want to create that room, amend the Constitution. And for you to amend it, you have to go back to Article 255. Because it goes to the core. It touches on the functions of Parliament. We have got no leeway to pass it through this House, even if you have 2/3 majority. you must go to back to the people. That is the plain truth. That's the plain truth. So, our position, my position as a member of parliament for Ugunja, the position of my party, the Orange Democratic Movement, the position of my coalition, the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party, and indeed the position of, I believe, majority of Kenyans, is that this route is dangerous and we must shun it. So I call upon those like-minded members to join me in rejecting these proposals for the good of posterity. For the good of posterity. If you want cabinet secretaries to be in this house, say so. Let's amend the constitution. Let those cabinet secretaries be appointed from amongst you. You, members of parliament. I will be happy, even if I'm on the back bench, to be engaging with cabinet secretaries in the house as my colleagues. I'll be very happy. But to meander, to go around, to gerrymander, no, no, we are not part of that gerrymandering. We refuse that invitation. We refuse it totally. Totally. And therefore, I want to caution the relevant House committee that is dealing with those amendments, that those amendments, those proposed amendments, the standing orders, are dead on arrival. And that if they come here, we should mobilize ourselves and reject them in toto, because they are unconstitutional ab initio, Madam Speaker. No amount of patchwork can cure that mischief, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me conclude by saying that this House should be left alone to run its affairs. We don't want any interference from whatever quarter. Let this House run its affairs, and let this House maintain its independence. We may differ politically out there, which we should anyway, but when we come here, let's safeguard the credibility, the integrity, the independence of this House, and protect our Constitution. You know, we have said time and again that indeed there are defaults. Any constitution cannot be perfect. Even the American Constitution was amended. In fact, it was made much earlier than ours. I'm sure Honorable Baya can recall the first amendment of the American Constitution, because he happened to have had some sojourn in that land. I don't know what you are doing there. I don't know. You have to tell me. So, Madam Speaker, so this is such a time that calls for bipartisan approach. Let me conclude. Madam Speaker has asked me some 2 minutes to say something.
1 minute, please summarize.
Just two. Madam Speaker, as we do this, we must also reflect on where we're coming from as a country. In the recent past, we have had to contend with very, very, very unfortunate episodes. There is the recent remark by the Honorable Gachagua. You know, some of these remarks, some of those outbursts have got the effect of eroding the principle, the spirit of constitutionalism in this country. Madam Speaker, I was just looking at Article 27 of the Constitution. Honorable teacher, you can help me. Article 27, sub-article 4. And I may read for avoidance of doubt. The state shall not discriminate directly or indirectly against any person on any ground, including, among others, conscience, belief, age, color, origin, and so on and so forth. So if you come out in the open and proclaim that the state is now going to adopt an official policy to discriminate
against persons or regions in this country on the basis of how they voted, then what are you calling for? What are you inviting? You are asking Kenyans to start nursing other thoughts. That if I don't subscribe to a political thought, if I am not a shareholder in your so-called company, then I must look for ways of funding for myself, including refusing to obey rules, to obey laws, and to pay tax. Then we will be calling for the rule of the jungle. You will be calling for the state of anarchy in the country. That must be condemned strongly by every other member in this house, regardless of our political persuasions. If you find yourself in a position of responsibility, regardless of how you found yourself there, you must ensure that you conduct yourself in a manner that gives honor to that office. You must shun those primitive tendencies, regardless.
Thank you, Honorable Pio Wandai. Honorable members, I can see there is a lot of interest, especially on the CBC motion. We only have 14 minutes on this motion. I would ask that as many can be able to contribute. We keep it short. I'll give this chance to the Honorable Daniel Karivo, MP for Igembe Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I stand to support this motion. The motion on CDF, the motion, Madam Speaker, there are a lot of noises. I don't know.
Continue, Honorable Karido.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm standing to support this motion because it's a motion that is very important, especially on that gender rule. It's a motion that we will not avoid because it's in the Constitution, that we are all saying we want to uphold and protect. And we have no way but to support this motion so that the women, or rather the gender, be protected. On the issue of having the CSS coming in this house to answer questions other than the committees, I also support it because what the committees will tell us is not what we will be told by the CSS. Then, Madam Speaker, I stand to support the issue of NG-CDF. We also support and GAF that they will be protected in the Constitution, and this being the House of Legislation, I believe, Madam Speaker, the MPs have the capacity to handle the constitutional matters and make sure that all these issues are safely handled in the right manner and protected as per the Constitution. Then, Madam Speaker, I support all those amendments and I stand to support. Thank you.
Member for Sotik, Honorable Sigei. Honorable Moses Kirema, Central Menti.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this important motion of amendment of our Constitution at this moment. Madam Speaker, it's the right time that we should come up with the amendment since our Constitution has taken place since the year 2010 up to now, even though the said Constitution has not been implemented to the letter as it is supposed to have been implemented, because there are things which have not been legislated upon. But the articles which have been being applied and they require to be changed or to be amended, is the right time that we should touch on them. Madam Speaker, if you look at the part of the constituencies which are said to be and been protected by the Constitution up to the year 2024, we have only 1 year, that's the 2023. And by the time of the year 2024, some constituencies may not be seeing the light of the day because they will be scrapped
for they have not met the requirements of the tenants as it is supposed to be in the constitution as it comes to a population threshold. So, Madam Speaker, I stated that we should allow the amendment of this constitution in respect of the source where it has emanated from, because what's important is the amendment of the constitution. Even though when it comes to that stage of amendment, I will bring that idea of amending the constitution so that at least the consequences which have been said to be threatened by the existence of the constitution, or whereby if they have not met the threshold, they are supposed to be scrapped off. As I heard a colleague of mine here saying that they should be scrapped off if that moment come in. We will come with an amendment to see that they still continue to exist. For if people have been given a chance to have a constituency, and now you come to tell them that those constituencies shouldn't be struck off, Madam Speaker, that will be a source or a recipe of chaos. Now, as I sit down, the idea of amending the constitution to entrench the CDF and GAF should be at least accommodated by every member in this parliament. For without that one, we are being left at the mercy of those who call shots of the day, possibly the executive, because they may decide that today we are going to have CDF and somebody else come in the same office tomorrow and says that we should not have it. We are the mercy of activists in this Republic of Kenya, whereby activists sleep one night, the following day, they go to court and they say that CDF is not in the constitution. That's why I'm supporting the constitution amendment so that we can have GAF and CDF in the constitution. When it comes to having CSs, cabinet secretaries coming in this house, we will address it at the right time when it comes. Because I still believe, as far as I'm concerned, having gone through that constitution and in being one of those people who did a campaign for this constitution in the year 2010, those are strangers in this house. In despite of the side which I am in the house, those are strangers. Let's not mix ones. They are strangers. As an advocate, I will not be intimidated by anybody to support what is wrong. It is wrong and it is wrong. But what is right, we are supposed to support it. That's all, Madam Speaker. I support the motion as it is.
Honorable Abdul Haro, Mandera South.
Honorable Speaker, sorry, I had contributed to this motion last week.
Thank you. Honorable members, please note if you've contributed, you cannot contribute twice to the same motion. This chance will go to member for Dagoretti North, Honorable Beatrice Elachi. I see she's not in the house. Next chance will go to Honorable Paul Biego, Chesumei. Okay, not in the house. Honorable Robert Mbui, Kathiani, you have contributed. Honorable Julius Ruto, Keses.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity you provided me to make a contribution on the motion before us. I think this motion is a continuation of what we had already discussed in the previous session, where all of us are of the interest that CDF, GAV, and any other related decentralized fund is a fund that was designed to bring out the equalization among our communities and across the board in the country Kenya. I know over time it has come a lot of challenges because of the related acts, and those people who have tried to divine the placement of these particular funds. But when you look at the spirit of the same fund, and from the feedback of the intended support people, they really appreciate that the fund has really transformed their livelihood. To avoid all these shenanigans and all these legal litigations here and there, we all know that Constitution is the supreme law of the country. And it's from the Constitution that we derive the powers, we derive the legislations, we derive the orders,
we derive the functions and the applicability of all these particular laws. So I stand to support that it is high time that when such opportunity has come, let us all of us embrace the discussion for the good and for the benefit of the people of Kenya, as it is stipulated in Article 1, that all these powers belong to the people of Kenya. I know this amendment to the Constitution also has come with other proposals, including that the Parliament can allow the CSS to come in here so that they can be cross-examined, they can be questioned by the whole representative of the people, which in my case, that is a debatable discussion. And if it is for the good of the people of Kenya, that the CSS come across here, we subject them to cross-discussion questions, and for them to explain themselves to Kenyans here, then it be good. Though there are several schools of thought here, about local minds are telling us when they are here, we will have mixed up the kind of the system of administration from presidential and parliamentary. But it is good for us to discuss and look at the objective and the spirit in these amendments, so that we are able to progressively improve governance and citizen participatory in matters of governance, so that we are able to establish good governance in this country, Kenya. That the Kenyans who have had confidence in the elected people should be able to transparently participate and follow up the decisions that are being made for the good and for the benefit of them. So I stand to support the motion, and in this case that we need to protect this fund so that CDF, NGAV would be able to assist what ought to have been done by the national government with the challenges they are facing in terms of procurement system, lengthy processes of executing this process would be brought down to where the people are. And I believe it is not in any way complicating what the devolution is doing, because the devolution has got its own distinct function and the fourth schedule clearly describing the mandate and the resources that have been earmarked for the same functions. And for this one is a national government function, although it is being simplified through the local unit of constituency or a county in terms of county members of parliament. So I tend to support the motion, and I say that it is high time we look at it. And in any case, constitution, those who promoted the constitution, I remember there was some discussion that there would be some few issues that ought to have been looked at that time. And then of us agreed that let us pass this constitution, and then progressively we can bring in the amendments. And I feel after 10 years, already now we have served to be informed by this constitution, to know the challenges, the hiccups, the shortcomings, and it is as good, because what now we are doing is informed by the experience that we have encountered through implementation of the said constitution. So I want to implore upon this house that let us embrace this discussion and take it as an opportunity to straighten, to align where challenges is being experienced, so that as we are able to see the smooth operationalization of this constitution and for the ultimate benefit of the core objective as to why the Constitution 2010 was brought in by the people of Kenya, who are the sovereign people of this country. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I stand to support this discussion. Thank you.
Other members, I can see there's still a lot of interest, and this motion is not as limited, so it will go on. But right now, for the convenience of the House, we will move to the very important adjournment motion as deliberated and approved by the Speaker, by Honorable Kaluma, set for 4 p.m. And this motion, the mover will have 10 minutes. Any other member will have 5 minutes. I want you to actually get that very well. 5 minutes only. So I would like to invite the member for Homa Bay, Honorable Kaluma, to move the motion.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the following motion regarding the ongoing challenges being faced in the implementation of the competency-based curriculum within the education system. Honorable Speaker, there is great anxiety among parents, among pupils, among students, among people across the country over the implementation of the competency-based program, more particularly the aspect dealing with the junior secondary schools. And Honorable Speaker, because I'd moved initially when I sought leave, let me indicate that it has been reported and it is common knowledge that so many of our pupils who are in Standard 7 across the country are being registered by their parents to do Kenya Certificate of Primary Education as if they were in Standard 8, simply because parents and pupils are anxious about what is happening. Honorable Speaker, there is lack of capacity for optimal operationalization of the system given the state of infrastructure and in the public schools and of course personnel. Honorable Speaker, I think this thing is being operationalized across the country. When you go to Homa Bay Town constituency, Honorable Speaker, you have a single teacher who are recently recruited being posted in each and every primary school where the junior secondary school is domiciled. And Honorable Speaker, we all went to secondary school. The teachers in secondary schools are people who are trained in specific areas. If you're a teacher of CRE, it may be CRE and history, or English and literature. We have a situation where there is a single teacher trained in English and literature posted to a school as the sole teacher in that secondary school, and is being required to teach, Honorable Speaker, 12 mandatory subjects plus 2 optional ones. So you can imagine a teacher trained to teach history, and then this teacher who never interacted with mathematics is to teach mathematics, is to teach physics, is to teach home science, is to teach chemistry, is to teach biology, is to teach computer studies as an option, is to teach all those courses. We have a situation where because of that, parents don't have clarity about where this CBC program is ended. And no wonder we have now a situation where Standard 7 pupils are well dressed, Honorable Speaker. They wear very beautiful neckties. They are wearing trousers. In the same school, the Standard 8s are wearing some shorts, very old shorts. And you have a secondary teacher whose head teacher, Honorable Speaker, is the primary teacher. Essentially, you have a situation in the country where we are pretending to be implementing a program. And I'm happy Honorable Mboko members is listening keenly. But no meaningful learning is happening in the country. And Honorable Speaker, I know previously there were attempts by this House to discuss the whole matter of CBC. But each time the House had this motion before it, some Kenyan went to court, and so we were strangled by the issue of sub judice. I want to request that there be proper review. If we are going to implement this program, and Honorable Speaker, I'm saying I have no problem with CBC if it is deemed fit for this country. But let there be proper facilities. We don't have facilities in those primary schools where the junior secondary school is domiciled. And look, we thought all primary schools will be implementing this program. But what is happening now, in my constituency, the constituency I represent, not all primary schools are offering the curriculum. So you get some primary schools have been allocated, these schools don't have sister secondary schools, and then I'm saying your pupils floating there, not knowing whether they are secondary school students or not. It is chaotic. If we were bold as Parliament, I would have recommended, Honorable Speaker, that we have a serious relook as government. For the first time, we have something affecting the education sector, a matter over which Parliament, as the House of Representatives, have not properly deliberated in terms of policy and in terms of even the framework that is governing it.
If it were upon me, this thing would have been stopped and we have a review. Honorable Speaker, we did our studies under the old 844, not this one which was diluted later. Honorable Speaker, by the time I was done with standard 8 in the old 844, I had done arts, we had done craft, we were carving, we were doing necklaces as beautiful as the one our Honorable Speaker is wearing now. We had done tie and dye, we had done embroidery, we would do patterns, we were cooking ugali ya wimbi and chapati. Honorable Speaker, we were doing agriculture and animal husbandry. We knew what fertilizer to apply on what crops and how to apply it and at what time. We knew how to do compost manure. We knew mulching, propping, staking. I would look at any animal, Honorable Speaker, and determine with near 90% probability the disease it was suffering from. We knew how to castrate bulls. We would de-own cows. We knew what cow needed a bull just by look. Honorable Speaker, we were so enriched that you would finish your standard 8, you do your KCPE, and you go and you start your agriculture somewhere. Over time, we diluted that. I would have wished that Kenyans be listened to before this implementation, and I don't know why this rush. It is unfortunate we are where we are. But I'm grateful for this opportunity that we raise this matter as the representatives, so that these challenges can be put together. And Honorable Speaker, I believe the Ministry of Education is watching. Today, I want us to talk about these challenges. But if they cannot be picked by the ministry for the good of all Kenyans, I would not mind this House of Representatives resolving that we stop this CBC and we continue in a form of education that give meaning to the children of the poor people. Honorable Speaker, do you know what is happening now? For those of us who have money, our children are going to private schools now and are going into international schools. For those who could maneuver, their children, and Honorable Meli will confirm, are being registered to do standard 8 before they do standard 7. The people who are suffering, Honorable Speaker, are the children of that poor person who can only go into a public school. I want to request members that we deliberate, we discuss this issue dispassionately. If there are issues which can be picked in terms of bettering the program, we do so. One of the things we must insist on is that if we are going to have junior secondary schools, then, Honorable Speaker, we must have sufficient number of teachers with necessary expertise to proceed. Honorable Speaker, with that so that members can have enough time to deliberate, I beg to move and I urge the support of members so that we can inform the implementation of the competency-based curriculum and more particularly the junior secondary school. I move, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kaluma. This chance will go to the MP, Honorable Meli Tinderet.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to speak to this motion by Honorable Peter Kaluma on the issue of CBC. First of all, I want to agree with Honorable Kaluma that CBC as a new curriculum has several teething issues, has a number of challenges. It has issues concerning infrastructure, it has issues concerning the teaching staff, it has issues, a number of issues. That is common with every other new educational system and new curriculum. But however, this is quite a very good curriculum for this country, Honorable Speaker and members. First of all, I want to laud the officers who went all the way to design this new education system. I know many people in the country, and even Kenyans at large and across the world, are always not interested or actually do not like a new system. I do remember, as Honorable Kaluma knows very well, that when the 844 was started around 1984-85, Kenyans were up in arms. And they were always saying, let us go back to the 7 years in primary, 6 years in high school, and 3 at the university. That was as a result of a novelty, something that was introduced. But let me just come back to the CBC. I think it was in this house, this parliament, in the
12th Parliament that we did pass the sessional paper that brought CBC here. It was in this house that members of this house went through the various curriculum circle designs that the Ministry of Education, the officers, actually took this country through. As much as the whole system was started from PP1, unlike in the 844 where it was introduced at class 7, this one has been introduced at PP1 or PP1 and PP2 all the way to grade 6. The designs were done. All the teaching and learning areas have been put in place. The issue that I know is of contention here is the issue of teaching staff. Honorable members, I just want to say this. As the Kenya Kwanza administration, I think it was a pledge in our plan that this government employs 116,000 teachers in 5 years. This year, we've employed 36,000 teachers. 30,000 of those are for junior secondary. Apart from that, the Committee of Education has employed the Teacher Service Commission to get qualified teachers in primary schools. Qualified teachers in primary schools who can teach secondary schools to be posted to junior secondary. We have issues of infrastructure that I know is common in almost all schools in the Republic. But the money that we have currently, that is why yesterday I know our committee went to the Budget and Appropriation Committee asking them to give us infrastructure money that will be able to put up to, so that every junior primary school will have a lab. So, Honorable Speaker, this is the system of education that is going to make Kenyans equal. It will ensure that we are going to have one school system where a child will start from PP1 to grade 9 to grade 12 in the same school. A few weeks ago, a number of honorable members here were running up and down trying to place students in elite schools of Alliance, Kapsabet Boys, Butere Girls, Kisumu High School and the rest. But now with the CBC, all the schools in the Republic will be brought to the same standards. There will be no school, an elitist school like Alliance Boys or in Mangu School or any other school. We will have schools that cut across the Republic. 2, this issue of moving a child from school A to school B and to school C will be a thing of the past. I want to implore members that let this house give the requisite resources to employ enough teachers, to build enough laboratories, to build enough classrooms so that this kind of education will run throughout the country. And it will stop where we have. I heard Honorable Kaluma just saying that members will take their children to private schools. As we speak today, the curriculum that is implemented is the CBC curriculum. I do not think there is any private school, maybe the international schools, that are doing other curriculums. But all the private registered schools in the Republic are doing CBC. The issue of teachers maybe trying to take students, to move the students from grade 7 to 8 so that they avoid the system is a common practice, even in the other system. We had the same crop of teachers trying to avoid the 844 by just going to the older system of education.
Honorable Meli, since you're the chair of education, I'll give you 2 minutes to finish up.
Thank you. Honorable Speaker, thank you so much for that. I also want to point out that the teaching service, that is why we did as a committee, told the Teacher Service Commission to move with speed, identify those teachers who are qualified. As we speak today, members, we have a number of teachers who are graduates in primary schools. They are qualified and they can teach in the junior secondary schools. Thousands of them. By last week, they said they had identified 10,000. And we told them every junior secondary school should have a minimum of 4 teachers. And the reforms that Honorable Kajwang has just said is quite all in order. Every education system after 3 or 4 years is reviewed. And as we speak today, there is a review, there is a task force reviewing the CBC system. There is an outcry by parents that the subjects at the teaching areas are too wide, backwards to 8 or to 6. I remember the pioneers of 844. They had 12 teaching areas. But as we speak today, the current crop of 844 students are doing 5 subjects. Every educational system can be reviewed, can be looked into, the challenges can be minimized, and even the areas that we see are difficult, we can talk to it and we'll be able to rectify them. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to support and say that let this system continue, let us review the areas that are there, and let us make sure that CBC is a success in our country for now and for future generations. I thank you and I support the CBC. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Meli. I know we have very many teachers in this house who are asking to be given opportunities, but I can see there is a lot of interest, so the shorter we keep it, the more members speak. This chance will go to the member from Marsabit, Honorable Wako.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to add my voice to this. Madam Speaker, this is the right time to talk of CBC curriculum in our country because of what the country is going through. Madam Speaker, 844 system has served this country for the last many years, and now it is time for us to replace that with CBC. But what I want to say is there is a lot of cry in the country, parents are concerned, and there is a lot of confusion. What we need to do as a country is to give ourselves time to do enough so that we get out of the confusion that is affecting the parents and the children. Again, the other thing that we can see is CBC is quite expensive and tedious to the people, and that is affecting, as I said, it is affecting the entire nation, and that is why we need to see how we can review the entire thing and also prepare the teachers, because the teachers seems to have not been prepared well. There is a confusion on curriculum, and even preparing the parents. The infrastructure is not in place, and we need enough time to prepare. In as much as I support the new curriculum to take place, I would want us to give it more time so that we prepare ourselves, we prepare the teachers, we also prepare the children so that they can easily move on to this other new system. Madam Speaker, I support and I suggest that we give ourselves a bit of time. Thank you.
Member for Suna East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to also contribute to the debate. Madam Speaker, I don't want to disagree with the chairman of the Education Committee because he's a seasoned chairman. Even when he was removed, I used to call him the chairman because he understands the education sector very well. But Madam Speaker, we must admit that there is a crisis in our country about the education sector. That we must admit because it is really on the ground, it is happening. Madam Speaker, whether it is by default or design, the transition from, is it junior or whatever it is called, to senior, Madam Speaker, was never done properly. One teacher per school, no classes. The Ministry of Education on their own, said that almost 200,000 students have not transitioned to junior secondary school. Where are those students? They must be tangering in the cities and the villages, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, if this matter is not arrested as fast as possible, the crisis could get bigger than this, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are sectors in this country that you can experiment with. But there are sectors also that you cannot do experiment on it. The education sector is an example, and the health sector. Because those things affect the ordinary citizens. Madam Speaker, we must bring to the attention of this House that this crisis of high monumental, and if this House does not come up with a resolution on how to deal with this matter, this country is going to get into a serious crisis that they may not be able to handle in the future. I know the way Honorable Kaluma said, majority of members here have their children in private schools, and some of them don't give back anymore because they're old people. And most of them have gone to university and finished. They are elders here, and others have taken to private school. Madam Speaker, the ordinary Kenyan there is suffering. The ordinary Kenyan there does not understand what CBC means. I was in a school in my constituency the other day, in our last parliament, and I was told they had been taken to a bus, that they had been taken to an animal farm so that the students can familiarize themselves with animals, with goats, cows, and chicken. Those villagers know those things. That is their way of life. Madam Speaker, if you look at the proportion of teachers to students in every CBC class, Madam Speaker, you'll be shocked. So, Madam Speaker, I want to urge from both sides of the House that we must take action as fast as possible. And I think, as the chairman has said, a solution may not be to go back to the 844 system that we all went through. Even though that was the real CBC, Madam Speaker. This CBC, we used to make aeroplanes with papers. You remember, Madam Speaker? Unless you were, I'm sure you are young, you are not old, Madam Speaker. So you remember those things. So, Madam Speaker, if action is not taken, I'm repeating for the last time in my conclusion, Madam Speaker, let me not say that, but action must be taken and Kenyans must be saved from this issue of CBC once and for all. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you for keeping it short. If we do that, many of us will get a chance to speak. Honorable Robert Mbui, member for Kathiani.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity for also getting to contribute to this very, very serious motion. Madam Speaker, any country that wants to grow and to progress obviously has to invest heavily in education. I mean, some of the countries that were similar to Kenya at independence, the Malaysias of this world, invested properly in education. And this is a sector, like the minority youth has said, we cannot play around with it. The fact is that there is a major crisis, and there is a crisis in the implementation of the CBC system. And the worst thing about it, Madam Speaker, is that this is not a system that started last year. This is a system that started 7 years ago. So 7 years ago, those honchos in Limo House knew that there would be junior secondary, they knew there would be senior secondary, and they knew they had to prepare for it. But, Madam Speaker, what I am seeing is a spirit of confusion, which you must find a way to deal with. Because, look, Madam Speaker, first and foremost, because I want to qualify the spirit of confusion, JSS classes were built in secondary schools, then the implementation of JSS now is being done in primary schools, where there are no classes. Madam Speaker, grade standards class 7 students are in primary school, are in secondary school, while class 8 students are still in primary school. Madam Speaker, further confusion is when you find class 7 students wearing trousers and our bigger brothers, their bigger brothers are still in shorts, in a more junior school. And let me tell you, I've observed this, that the Ministry of Education came up with a plan, and they said not every primary school will be allowed to have junior secondary school. So they said that in some of the schools, the children will be moved to other schools. What has happened is that grade 7 students have left a school which had a class that was already built with teachers, have gone to another school where there is no new class, they've increased the population in that class, and there are no extra teachers. I mean, what is more confusing than that? Madam Speaker, I think we really have a problem. And then, of course, my colleague, the Honorable Kaluma, said that the idea of a teacher teaching 14 subjects is totally unusual and totally impossible. So, Madam Speaker, I think it's important that we deal with this thing properly. There are not even enough textbooks. Madam Speaker, some of the subjects, like art and music, don't even have textbooks up to now, because nobody wants to invest in something that is going to be optional, and they're not too sure how many people will buy. So we have a problem even of the basic materials required for this system. And Madam Speaker, what has happened and what is most annoying for us is during this period of drought and hardship, head teachers in some of these schools have taken advantage, introduced admission fees, introduced fees for new uniform, and uniform is not necessary. Children can finish school with the clothes they were wearing before. They have to carry new lockers. They could have used the ones that they were using before.
And now they've even introduced school feeding programs because now they're in grade 7, it is called secondary, now they have to start paying fees. It's really unfortunate. It's something that we need to completely condemn with the strongest terms possible. So, Madam Speaker, for me, I think the rain started beating us when we allowed the Ministry of Education to completely disregard Article 94, Part 5, which says that no person can make provision having the force of law except Parliament. If we had put our foot down when this thing was being started, we would have been able to discuss further and been able to sort it out. My proposal is that all primary schools must be allowed, Madam Speaker, to continue having junior secondary schools. The idea of moving children from one school to another, I think it's preposterous. It is important that they continue where they are. I heard the chair of education saying when a child starts in grade 1, they should go all the way up to grade 9 and all the way up to grade 12. Why are they then chasing them now? You know, a lot of children will drop out. A lot of children are discouraged. So it's important that we do that. And finally, we must invest in classes and labs in all our primary schools for this system to work. Otherwise, Madam Speaker, we need to deal with the confusion. Maybe we may put it up for prayers because I know we are a praying nation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Majority Whip.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this is the very first time I'm tempted to agree with Honorable Robert Mbui. And I don't know how, from what side we woke up this morning, because we seem to be agreeing everything the entire day, from the morning interview on Citizen and now about CBC. And with this trend, you'll also agree with me that William Ruto is the president, because we are agreeing virtually over everything. But, Honorable Speaker, this thing about CBC is something that really this House needs to make a serious recommendation and stand firm over it. And it's becoming something that is very, very expensive. Majority of the members of this House happen to represent constituencies from remote areas. You know, different places, you know, the way our country is set up in such a way that most of the constituencies are from the rural areas. And but when you look at the formation and the structure of CBC, it focuses on the targets of the rich and the people who live within the urban setup. I think for some reason, Honorable Speaker, somebody wanted to rush this whole thing about CBC for whatever reason that befits them then. And I think it's important for government to realize that this, it wasn't part of our plan. By the way, this wasn't part of the Kenyan plan. It wasn't part of the manifesto by the Kenya Kwanza. This was a setup. This was a hub for somebody to make money in the previous administration. And there is need for us to review that. It's very important for this education committee that sit here to realize that. Because parents are struggling. Back in the village, parents are struggling. We all represent constituencies. Every day, students are sent home for something. You know, nowadays, teachers, and I say this with a lot of respect, some teachers, not all teachers, wrong teachers, sit in the staff room and decide that the afternoon lesson is to learn how to cook chicken. And they decide and say, all the students should go at home and come with chicken so that we can practice. And then they start, what is the teacher doing? The teacher is cooking chicken. What is the teacher doing? They are still cooking chicken.
Honorable Solo, there's a point of order. Honorable Mboko member.
Oh no, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Leader respected, I don't think CBC itself is being defeated simply because of teachers. These are very weighty matter that requires thinking through, and not just blaming the teachers. And there are no teachers, Honorable Member, who are even teaching how to eat chicken. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Continue, Honorable, sorry, without casting aspersions on teachers. I want to warn you, the population of teachers here is quite some.
Honorable Speaker, it's important to say that my late father was a teacher, and I have tremendous respect for the teachers. What I say is that in...
Honorable Rosa, what's your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, is
the former speaker in order in suggesting that in this country there is no curriculum in our education system, that any teacher can wake up any day and decide what to teach. That if a teacher wakes up that he wants to teach how to cook chicken, she can go ahead with it. Is the former speaker in order in suggesting that we don't have a curriculum in our system, but the teachers follow?
Sorry, Speaker, I am not a former speaker, so I don't think that question was referred to me. I should ignore it. But I wanted to say this, that the whole thing has, I don't know, it wasn't, I think she wasn't referring to me. There's a former speaker seated somewhere, I think, in this plenary. But, Speaker, Madam Speaker, when I use the context of chicken, I don't really mean that teachers do that. I'm saying that some rogue teachers have decided to misuse, not generally, some. Because we've actually seen such scenarios across. But even before we finish these orders, I want to make my point, and I'm sure, I don't know why Honorable McClap is really making a lot of noise.
Honorable members,
allow me to...
I would pray, Honorable Osoro, and members, that we do not abuse the point of orders.
Please.
Be relevant, because I see members are using them to debate.
Okay. But I want to withdraw. Teachers are never rogue. They just like chicken. But as I said, they're never rogue. They like chicken. But, Speaker, that thing has been misused. The other day, last week, and I think it's very important for me to say this, I went to visit somebody in Diana, and I found students, the grade 6 students, just besides somewhere that I'm trying to put up somewhere in the coastal region. And I found students, grade 6, who were supposed to graduate to grade 7, seated by the road. And they could not be admitted in school because they did not have school uniforms. They did not have some, things that are required, like several requirements. And when I asked for that form, what I saw written in that form as requirements for a student transiting to grade 7 shocked me. Things that parents cannot afford. Things that, like you're telling a grade 6 student, now you're transiting to grade 7, you're giving them serious, expensive requirements for a parent who was preparing to save money for Form 1. I think we really rushed this thing. There is need for the government to review this CBC thing. And I do not know where these people of the committee of, CBC or something, I don't know what they're doing. Where do they move? They do not even come. I think these people are sitting somewhere eating mandazi and then go there and do recommendations that are funny. Honorable Speaker, I implore on this House to find a way to reverse this system back to the system that we all know, and then we gradually start moving. We do it gradually. Equip our schools. Look here, as we are speaking here today, members of parliament do not have adequate funds for CDF. Today we have about 33 million. We are being told we need to do labs for purposes of JSS. The Minister of Education does not have money. Equalization fund is not sufficient across the country. And then we are here being told, CBC is important, let's support it, let's support it. We are representatives of the people. We are not stupid by going through 844 or 76 or something. We are very sharp people here. Let's revert to the previous system. Let's revert to the 844 so that our students and the real constituencies can progress. And I think the chair for Education Committee has heard me, and this is very clear. Thank you very much.
Member for Budongori, Ravelu wa Mushomba.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to indeed, as a trained teacher, to give my contribution into this motion. It is sad and very sad that we are debating the future of the people God has entrusted unto us, to shape their future, to give them life and hope. Those wonderful children that are going through this system, the CBC. It is unfortunate, Madam Speaker, that in this country, we do not give weight to the Ministry of Planning, whose core business is to plan the economy of this country. In fact, the most lucrative ministries in this country are ministries of health, ministries of agriculture, ministry of water and land, not because we find them worth giving them weight, but because they control a lot of money. We ignore the critical ministries like Ministry of Planning and Finance, the ministry that is supposed to be giving us economic planning, well contributed and well thought, that is supposed to have advised us on the CBC before implementation. Like one of my colleagues have said, Madam Speaker, I still as a teacher do not understand why we had to go the million kilometers rush to implementing CBC. I do not know the people who sat in a certain boardroom and decided that they are going to implement CBC, even against the advisory that was given by the then Cabinet Secretary, Madam Amina. Madam Amina spoke very strongly against CBC implementation without thorough thinking and planning. But I do not know the kind of motivation that was behind the so-called the government of the day, that we had to take a risk to mess a generation in this country by hurriedly implementing a system that has not been framed properly. Madam Speaker, as a mother, it pains me to walk into schools like in my constituency and find 4 learners in a school which is supposed to be a JSS center. 4 learners. How do we employ 4 teachers for 4 learners? How do we put a laboratory for 4 learners? How do we buy equipment in the laboratory for 4 learners? Where are economic planners that are supposed to be advising the governments of the day? What are they doing and why do we pay them a salary in those offices that they sit? Madam Speaker, it is sad that we are politicizing the life of a generation of this country. We must come fresh and real to what we are doing. It is time we ask ourselves whether we are doing justice to the seats that we've been given by the people of Kenya. They have elected us so that we can advocate for the rights of their children. Most of these parents do not have a voice. We have a voice. Most of these teachers we are talking about and joking around here in Parliament, because I can see a joke here, they have no voice. We have a voice. We must stop politicizing CBC and become the parent God has made us to be. We must become the leaders that have been elected honorably to stand in the gap and save a generation. How many children are at home right now because they cannot afford uniform for JSS? How many children are at home right now because they cannot afford a desk? Madam Speaker, shockingly, these are the same children, runners who are in primary school. They had a desk, but just because they have graduated to JSS, they are being forced to buy a fresh and a new desk. For what purpose, Madam Speaker? It is us that God has entrusted us to do it. It is us the whole country is looking upon. It is us who are supposed to advise, and we must stand in the gap and provide a sober direction for JSS. If we cannot be able to implement JSS, we would rather stop it and get back to the drawing board and look for a solution, because we are going to be asked by God, why did you not do what you're supposed to have done? I do not understand the rush. I do not understand the thinking behind JSS if you cannot be able to implement. Madam Speaker, please, I want to be heard. One day, one time, if we ever go to heaven, that we read there, we shall be asked a question. I don't know what you will answer as a member of Parliament. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Irene Mayaka.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this very important motion. Honorable Speaker, when you do a cursory look at some of the countries that have been able to do CBC and implement it, like France, Canada, Finland, those are countries that have fantastic infrastructure. The idea behind CBC was a fantastic idea. The level of interactions that you see with our children has been great. But then again, this cannot be implemented in our country because we don't have the proper infrastructure. The beginning, success, and failure of CBC starts and ends with proper infrastructure. Madam Speaker, one of the things that I see a lot of parents grappling with is that they are forced to download and print different things. So you can imagine a student who is down there in Nyamira, in Nyamotentemi, and they're told that they need to download things for their children, and they don't even have, number one, access to electricity, not even access to, proper access to internet connectivity. Madam Speaker, this country has a long way to go. Let's agree with that. Our children are suffering, and a lot of hidden costs are hidden behind this CBC issue. Honorable members here have been speaking about parents being asked to pay for desks, parents being asked to pay for new uniforms, things that they cannot even afford. And these problems come back to the CDF factor, because the same elected leaders are the ones that parents are looking up to for them to provide bursaries, which again, we can't even do because the courts are also fighting the CDF. So Madam Speaker, what I want to say, and I support the fact that we allowed this very important motion to take priority, is that as a country we need to make decisions. Madam Speaker, when you look at some of the students who started with CBC, especially from very young, there are those who did not even taste 844. And for these ones, these are the ones that I really feel sorry for. Because if we decide as a country we are going back to 844, then what happens to them? Where do they begin from? Do they have to do a crash course so that they can also get to know what 844 is all about, because they never got to experience 844? These are the students that we really need to look at. And maybe the solution wouldn't be that we go back to 844. The actual solution should be that can we find a style of doing CBC that works for everyone, not only for those of us who are in the urban setup, but those who are in the rural setup, because the ones who are affected the most are actually the students and pupils who are back in the rural setup. Again, Madam Speaker, the CBC competence exams normally examine students based on your talents and your level of competence. Sometimes these are things that you are not able to actually put on paper and structure and say that this is how they're being tested. Because how do you then know that this student has a talent in writing and this other one does not have a talent in writing, they have a talent in speaking? So do you then give the one who has a talent in writing a lower grade in speaking and the other way around, just because they don't have the same level of competence? Madam Speaker, and as I conclude also, I just want to speak about the teachers. Because the teachers who are teaching CBC have been given almost 14 subjects. These same teachers are parents to pupils and children who are doing CBC. So what time do they have to commit to their children when they go back at home in the evening? Because we also need to be fair as a country. And as I wind up, Madam Speaker, I just want to say that sometimes, yes, benchmarking is good, but also as a country, before we run to benchmark and adopt systems from other countries, we need to first of all be realistic and compare the kind of infrastructure that we have in a country. I know for a fact, like for example, the countries that I gave an example of, in Kenya we really wanted to adopt the Finland system. But look at where Finland is versus where Kenya is right now. And Madam Speaker, even when we say that implementing this is not easy, again, we have heard from the Kenya Kwanza government that there's no money. So where do we even get money in the first place to start to do some of these things? So Madam Speaker, as leaders of this country, I think this is an issue that needs to be dealt with at a higher level. It probably needs to be considered as a national emergency so that proper planning can be taken into taking care of this, because our children are suffering. I thank you.
Asante sana mbunge wa Lungalunga, Mangale, Chiforomodo.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. CBC is now being judged by where it came from. First, let me say, Madam Speaker, the problem began with the process of initiating CBC. Because then, as a country, we woke up one day and said that we are implementing CBC. In any case, if we are starting a new curriculum or a new system, there is a process. But the process was never followed at the first place. We just rushed and to grade 3 onwards that they are in CBC. While in the real sense, we ought to have prepared our colleges so that we get professionals who will attend to the pupils in the CBC classes, right from ECD to the highest grade, that's in the university. The professionals were never prepared. When we talk about infrastructure, the infrastructure ought to have thought earlier before even the implementation. Today, we are lamenting about the infrastructure as in desks and labs and all that. They are not there because the process was never followed. In fact, we ought to have invested in the infrastructure before even implementing. But more so, we would have started from the ECD, going gradually to where we are, but it was rushed. Now what we are saying and what I would wish to contribute in this honorable house, we have to go back, because then there is no way we can expose our children now to CBC pretending that all is well and not all is not well. I want to concur with the majority whip that we have to do away with CBC as it stands. It's not too late to stop it where it has reached, because we can talk of cost. It cannot be implemented because it is very expensive. Infrastructure is not there. Even the teachers themselves, we are saying that they've been posted. Yes, they are teaching. They have 2 teaching subjects. Let's say chemistry, physics. Well, but they are not trained to teach CBC. They have been trained in the university to teach 844. So the problem is much bigger than what we see. So I would suggest that as a country, we are not ready for CBC. Comparing us with other countries who have implemented CBC is not a crime, yes, because we are not comparing ourselves on how rich they are or how poor we are, but it is about how preparedness, how prepared we are as far as CBC is concerned. We have a long way to go. If we push on saying that we are implementing CBC, we are killing a generation, and this thing will not take us anywhere. For sure, Madam Speaker, we have to stop CBC and revert back to 844, then come back, start planning from the initial stage, and then take step by step from ECD or from PP1, going pole until we reach where we are supposed to. But forcing CBC now, it will be a nightmare. We are talking about teachers, they are not there, or yes, one teacher, and we are being promised that after 5 years, we will have enough teachers. That will not work because already the students are in school learning. Are we treating our kids as guinea pigs? Of course, we are not ready to treat to use our kids as guinea pigs. We have to revert back to 844 and restart again if surely this country is ready to embrace CBC. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member from where?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I would wish to give a few points that I think maybe can benefit us and everyone and all Kenyans about CBC. That this motion was brought by Hon Kaluma, I want to thank him, so that a discussion can ensure. I would wish to say that there are 4 points around which now members are focusing on. There are those members who are talking about the ability to stop CBC and go back to 844. I would wish to plainly explain to the country as a teacher and an educationist that the CBC has been around for 9 years. And when we'll be making our final deliberations on CBC, we should understand that it began 9 years ago. And that students went through what was called PP1, PP2, and all the way now, they are in the so-called, the junior second school. And therefore, if you completely rub it to today, it means that these students will completely be wasted because they never did 844. and them going back to 844 would be extremely difficult for them to undertake again. So as we make our fund resolutions, we should actually put that in consideration, that these are population of students whom we must take care, and it's very important that we deal with the matter at hand. In fact, as we agree that there's a crisis in this particular area, but deal with it diligently so as not to waste our whole population of students who are in school. There is the issue also, Honorable Speaker, of the teachers, and members are grappling over why should one class have one teacher, and can it work or can it work not? I would wish to explain, Honorable Speaker, that the working of the primary school sector curriculum is different from the one of the second school. In the primary schools, teachers are taught to teach many subjects, and therefore you can provide one teacher for one class, and sometimes they are able to model around and succeed. But once we have CBC, which is bringing junior second school education, then the calculation of the number of teachers, Honorable Kaluma, must now go to what we call the curriculum-based establishment. In a curriculum-based establishment, you look at the curriculum vis-a-vis the combination of the subjects of the teachers who are in school, and you are able to calculate a certain ratio of the number of teachers who will be in school. If we go that direction, then everything is wrong, Honorable Kaluma, about the number of teachers in school, because it can never be one. There should be a number of teachers based on the curriculum-based establishment of every school, and also based on the number of subjects that are being offered. I hear there are 14, they have been reduced to 12, and so on and so forth. So, the solution lies in going the CBE way, and that would mean employment of more teachers in our schools. Honorable Speaker, the CBC is certainly having a number of challenges, ranging from those that concern infrastructure and the ones that have been raised by members of Parliament today. But I want to believe that we really must, as Kenyans, take responsibility. There is even a risk of my government, which I serve now, the Kenya Kwanza, easily saying that this system was brought by the previous government. If we go that direction, we shall kill the students who are in school. We must inherit this problem. In fact, in the way it is, we know it was implemented in a hurry, and you remember, honorable members, this is one of the projects that made some Kenyans go home completely. You remember people like Honorable Sosion, who were completely against this system. They had to pay the price of not supporting this particular system. And it was still thrust to us. So we have to carry it and see how we can remodel it in order to move forward without killing the students who are in the schools. Honorable Speaker, there's the issue of the teachers. It is very easy to want to blame the teacher for having tried to cook chicken, or trying to do what, or even trying to bring a desk, or trying to send students home for something. But let me tell this house that teachers have been left alone. Nobody is talking about CBC. The minister is not giving instruction, neither is anybody giving proper instruction to the teachers. And the teachers of this country have been left with students to make a decision on how to proceed with the students who are above them. And you will not even surprised to hear at one time that some students may be called upon to teach other students because of what we have. So my proposal to deal with CBC is funding. Let this house give funds for teachers. We employed 70,000 teachers more. They will take care of this situation. If you employ 70,000, no noise will be there. And you build laboratories, no noise will be there, and we shall move forward. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As I see my time is going.
Honorable Tonke, not in the House. Honorable Nikal, not in the House. Member for Kipkelion East, Honorable Cherorot.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wonder if the country has got the capacity to run the CPC. I think all the idea was rushed because we were supposed to have time and find out the nitty-gritties, the advantages and the disadvantages. Madam Speaker, as the position that we are in now, even the task force was formed up to actually implementing the CPC thing. So the problem that we have and the challenge that the parents have is the price that they are paying, because it is very expensive to run the CPC. The challenge, I was on Sunday around my constituency, Madam Speaker, and the big problem, we still have so many students who have not been admitted to the JSS, the junior secondary school. There is no facilities, there is no structures, proper structures. So the problem is that it is a very expensive exercise where the parents actually, or our parents, are feeling the burden. As members of parliament, me personally, I want to say that we have a big problem in this country. When it comes to even downloading the lessons and the teaching materials, it is also not easy because most of our areas have not been covered with the internet and even the electricity. Like in my constituency, we have the lower part of Inderiot and even Masamboric where there is no electricity, Madam Speaker. This challenge, Madam Speaker, we have to look at it keenly and make sure that if the government wants to continue with this CPC thing, then they have to fund it and make sure that there is enough funding to our schools. If we can have a look at it, especially the structures that are supposed to be there, they are not there. So the big problem that we have is that as members of parliament, we have to come up clearly and make sure that in future such decision will not be made abruptly without considering the structures and even the funding or the financial part of it. Madam Speaker, I know the idea was good, but the challenge is that do we have capacity as a country? So mine is to say that we need to go back, and we go back to 844 system, even though I know the challenge that our students are going to face, because most of them have been taken through. So the only thing is that we have to come up together with a solution and make sure that that solution will help our parents, it will help our schools, and even the future of those students. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I know honorable members, many are coming here to ask whether this motion will be there tomorrow. I want to make it clear it will not be, because this is an adjournment motion. It will only be debated today. Member for Kisauni, Honorable Rashid Bedzimba.
Asante sana Madam Speaker. Nilikuwa nimeomba nafasi ya kuzungumzia hasa ile marekebisho ya katiba na kanuni za bunge, lakini sikupata fursa, lakini na imani kesho Mungu akijalia tutaweza pata nafasi hiyo, kwa sababu iko muhimu kwamba hasa tukiona CDF inaweza kuingia katika shida, ni vyema tuzungumze ile ukweli.
Mheshimiwa, nakupa hakikisho kwamba huyo mswada bado utaendelea kesho na hauna mwisho wa masaa, kwa hivyo mtapata nafasi sawa ya kuweza kujadili.
Nimekushukuru kwa taratibu Mheshimiwa Madam Speaker. Kuhusu swala la CBC, kwa kweli Mheshimiwa Speaker, taifa halijakuwa tayari kwa haya mageuzi ya elimu. Halijakuwa tayari kabisa. Ukiangalia zile shule zilizochaguliwa kuwa na junior secondary ni chache ukilinganisha na wanafunzi ambao ni wengi zaidi. Walimu waliochaguliwa ni wachache ukilinganisha na shule na wanafunzi. Fedha pia hakuna za kuwezesha mchakato huu kuendelea kikamilifu. Ukiangalia shule zote hazina mahabara. Na hiyo CBC haiwezi kukamilika bila mahabara. Wazazi wanaumia kifedha kupeleka watoto wao kwa junior secondary, wanaambiwa wabadilishe uniform zao, wanaambiwa uende na madawati, kila siku kuna mambo mapya, inakuwa ni vigumu kutekeleza swala hili. Kwa hivyo mimi nasema, na wengi wa wajumbe hapa wamezungumzia kwamba swala hilo bado serikali halitakuwa tayari. Sasa tusiwe tu tunazungumza, tuwe litatekelezeka, kwamba kwa sababu ya wingi waliokataa lisimame. Na sisi hatumpingi aliyeanzisha swala hili. Hata mimi namwombea Mheshimiwa Magoha alale pema peponi, lakini kwa sasa serikali haijakuwa tayari na jambo hili. kwa sababu kila siku mnasikia serikali ikisema hawana fedha, na kama hawana fedha wale watoto watasomea wapi? Kila shule mtakana taratibu liko ongezwe madarasa, madawati, na ukiangalia hazina za NGCDF mpaka leo hazijatoa hata ndururu ya maendeleo. Sasa hizo madarasa tuongezeka wapi? Kwa hivyo mimi nasimama kuungana na wenzangu na pinga ili jambo kuendelea, turudi katika mfumo wa zamani, alafu huko mbele tukiwa tayari tutaweza kuingia. Na mimi nasema nitoe nafasi kwa wenzangu pia wapate nao kuchangia swala hili. Asante sana Madam Speaker.
Member for Mosop, Olabokiwa.
Thank you again, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to this motion of CBC. Madam Speaker, I support the CBC system. Regardless of the challenges that we are facing as a nation, this is a new curriculum that for sure it is going to change the way we teach our students. It is going to change the way we look at the education system. So I am for the, I support that we continue to implement it regardless, because right now most of the schools may not be really equipped enough, but anything good does not come easy. It will take all of us and every single one of us as a nation to really go out of our way to make sure if it's infrastructure issues, we try as much as possible to make sure that the schools have enough infrastructure. But the big problem that we have about the system is the teachers. As I was going through some of the schools this week and last week as well, most of the JSS classes, classes have only one teacher with only 40 to 50 students. So we want to challenge the TSC to do whatever it takes to make sure that they are providing enough teachers, because out of 37,000 teachers which was recruited, we should have enough. But throwing the baby with the water is not the best solution. We have already invested enough as a nation. We've spent so much resources already on CBC system. So I am for the opinion that there has to be a better way. There has to be a way that we can actually support this system so that it becomes successful. Many countries have done this and they have been successful in implementing the CBC system. So I support the chairman, I support the Ministry of Education in trying to implement and make sure this system produces some of the best students. It is easier for us to say, let's go back to 844 system, a system that I personally went through. But I have also lived in the country for many years which are using CBC system, and I have seen the results of a CBC system. It is better than the 844 system. So for sure, I support the CBC system. I support the government to implement it. As much as we have a lot of obstacles, I believe there is a better way that we can actually approach it and give all the support that we can give so that we produce the best students. CBC system is the way to go, and I think as members, even the team that was going wrong came to this house and members were asked to give their views and their opinions about the CBC system, and they supported it. I know implementation and the opinions we gave may not have been the same, but we gave opinions in this house and we agreed that the CBC should continue. And now for us to go back again and say that we don't think it is working, I don't support it. So, Madam Speaker, I support the CBC system. We should continue to implement it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Busia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand to oppose this motion because as a country, we are trying to make sure that we are equal, but this kind of curriculum has made it very difficult because it is widening the gap between the poor and the rich. Because at the moment, only the rich have managed to cope up
with the changes, leaving behind the children who come from the families that are still wallowing in the miasma of poverty. And I also condemn it because the stakeholders were not involved at the beginning. I think some people have forgotten where they have come from, and they are in their comfort zones coming up with things that discriminate or divide Kenya more. Because if somebody truly remembers that even some of us had to sit under a tree or on a stone or a log, and up to date there are other schools in the rural areas that still use desks that are very uncomfortable for any student to sit on, trying to concentrate and get what the teacher is saying. Some people think we are already 100 years from when we got our independence, so they copy or try to catch up with developed nations, but without remembering that Kenya still does not have infrastructure. Some of these homeworks that the teachers send the pupils to go back home, the parents are needed to participate. Some of the parents in the rural areas never even completed class 8 or even hardly completed that kind of level, that because a lot of resources. I had said that, but I wanted to emphasize more. Most teachers who are frustrated because it's more pragmatic than theory, the way we used to cram. Those who cannot afford even themselves their own basic needs at home, they are taking advantage of this curriculum and exploiting some parents who can manage to afford. So you'll find if maybe they were to do a practical to do with fish, why should every child carry a fish in class, and then most of the fish the teacher preserves and then only uses 1 or 2 in their practicals? So I think it is one way of also not really being sorry, somebody's confusing me, but he's right. Yeah, the teachers will eat the fish, yes, but I'm trying to say we need to be logistically right, politically right, economically right, and socially right when coming up with some of these things that we're trying to impound in people's lifestyle. Some of us are still walking. The stretch is too long to reach where everybody else is. Can we wait for others by coming up with things that work for all Kenyans, whether rich or poor, especially education, which is supposed to be like how we force these children to put on uniform. You can't tell who is poor or who is rich. So education should also be like that. All the poor, all the rich to get exactly the same, so that we can get a doctor from either family, because we will need to equalize or levelize the ground for these children. Thank you. Member for Nandi Hills.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I want to appreciate the mover of this motion for bringing it for us to be able to discuss this matter that I had a lot of concerns indeed, because from the onset, CBC had problems in itself from 2017, as someone had insinuated. In fact, the cabinet secretary at the time probably even lost her job because of questioning some of the implementation of that program. And later on, it was pushed down the throats of all Kenyans that this program has to run. The program is very expensive. That is no brainer. The reality is what is required for children when they are going to school, the pupils, and what they are being demanded to be brought to school in itself compared to 844, which was more structured and organized, has thrown many parents into poverty rather than helping us, that the government is able to provide primary education that is very affordable. Looking at it, the confusion that has come all through was even made worse by what Honorable Peter Kaluma has captured the other day when the junior secondary school students were, they did the exam, the Kenya Primary Education Assessment. When the results were out, about 1.2 million students passed, and up to now, about 200,000 have not been able to report. And even that said, Madam Speaker, of the 1.2, there was confusion as to are they going to go to a secondary school or are they going to go to the previous schools that they were in. The confusion was all over. The whole thing was not structured. Every day, it's like we are doing an experiment of the children of this country, which should not be the case. If we are changing an education system, it has to be well organized. There must have been a proper consultation on all the actors in the sector. But what happened at that time? As it were, many people, as I said, including Social and the rest, suffered big time. Indeed, when it was realized that there would be need for schools, the government for classrooms, the government at some point gave 9 billion for the building of the 10,000 classrooms, something that was not even well structured and planned. And then at the same time, they did not even plan the issue of the labs, the workshops, the dormitories, and such kind of things. So as it were, even now, what even pains me the most is the primary schools or the junior secondary schools that the children now are going to. Some of them were consolidated. That you find our desire in the past to have primary schools close to where children come from. Right now, some are being forced to walk up to 10 kilometers, taking us back from where we came from. Again, Madam Speaker, something very critical is the issue of the human resource, the teachers, who, as we speak, most of them were not well trained on this particular program. At the initial time, the British Council are the one who ran the program. Thereafter, there were TOTs that had been trained to come and train these teachers. And most of them, these TOTs by themselves, even as they are doing their training, would say they don't even understand most of the things that they were being pushed, there was a speed of this training to have happened. So the whole training aspect of even those who are passing knowledge of the junior secondary to the pupils, they are not trained. And this is very critical. How do you get fully baked students who do not have teachers who have been well baked by themselves? It is even worse to see two teachers handling a class of over 100 students. Worse of still is that there is no curriculum design as we speak. So to say, the syllabus that is well structured. It is even worse off that in most schools across the country you find that only one subject books have been delivered of the 13 subjects that are being taught in these schools. Equally, part of the things they were talking about the 844 is that the 844 was burdening students with a lot of subjects, only to come and realize that in this one that we have now, the CBC, it has 23 electable subjects and 13 are to be chosen. So essentially, there is a lot of confusion in the running of this program. We are not even sure now, Madam Speaker, that when we are done with the junior secondary, they say now we are going to go to the senior secondary. If I ask any member here or any leader, it is not clear to anybody what happens thereafter. Even the university lecturers have not been trained on this.
The time is up. Honorable Karoli Omondi, I know you've had a problem with your card for a while.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It's been a very difficult afternoon, struggling with my card the whole 2.5 hours. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to make some brief statements about this particular motion. Madam Speaker, my understanding of CBC is that it is a system that is borrowed on what globally is called International Baccalaureate System. And I think somebody was trying to do a cut and paste job, but did not understand the social and economic background under which what is called IB system operates. IB system is a very sophisticated educational system and actually is a very good system. But it is a very expensive system. It is generally, if you dig into the history, it has flourished in well-developed countries. And in this country, Kenya, it is offered mostly by very expensive international schools, private schools. And I think somebody somewhere in Kenya looked at the holistic nature of IB system and thought that they could borrow and transplant it. But this is a mistake that happens when people bring in things that they do not understand their origins or their full background. I want to talk briefly about the social costs of CBC.
and why I don't think this system will work very well in this country. In the IB system, the ratio, the teacher-student ratio is normally limited to 15 globally. There is no chance in hell, given our economic situation and our population growth patterns, that we will ever achieve that ratio anytime in the near future. Secondly, the engagement of the parents, if you look at it in the IB system, which is now being transplanted into the CBC system, does not reflect what our social parameters or social orientations are. For example, to expect a poor lady in Kibra to be attending to homework between 4 and 8 when she should be by the street selling hamburger or making a living is completely out of touch. To expect a student in Suba South, where I come from, to be downloading teaching equipment like my children do every day, they have full internet in their bedrooms, is completely out of touch. It is not practical. So the problem with CBC is that it is going to create very huge social disparities and economic disparities between the rich and the poor. And I think it would be foolhardy of this House not to call out the government. And I'm surprised that this administration is actually going forward to implement it. I thought they would retreat and relook at it. Education is the equalizer, is what brings out people from whatever social class you are born into through your hard work, innovation, and offers you social mobility into other social categories of life. And the way I understand CBC and the way I understand IB to work, which is where it is coming from, I do not see this thing working for this country. And I would strongly recommend that it be paused. It should be paused and the chaotic implementation taken away, because this will definitely affect the international perception of our educational system. Yes, I think it should be paused, relooked at into afresh, and then people to clearly understand what this animal called CBC is coming to, is all about. Otherwise, I see a lot of problems in the future. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for